Welcome back, loggers. We've officially hit 50 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you. Truly. Your support means everything, and I'm glad you've chosen to explore the unknown with me. To celebrate, I've put together something special. A story pulled from the liminal spaces we wander through together. This is the 50 subscriber special. Let's begin. And remember, not everything that's lost wants to be found. I don't remember how I entered this place. It might have been a glitch in my reality, a slip between floors, a gap in perception. One moment I was walking through a warehouse's loading dock, and the next, I was here. The first thing I noticed was the smell: stale air, industrial carpet, something like time left out in the sun. The lighting is soft and fluorescent, never flickering, never changing. There's no hum, just a pressure in the silence, like sound might exist, but chooses not to. The rooms are endless. Pale yellow wallpaper wraps every hallway, curling slightly at the baseboards. The carpet beneath my feet is damp. Not soaked, but always damp. It doesn't squish, but it doesn't feel dry either. I haven't seen another person since I arrived. I haven't seen a door that leads out. I haven't seen a window. My phone died after the first few hours. I think it's been days now, or weeks. Time here feels suspended, like I could sleep for a year and wake up in the same state. No older, no more tired, just paused. There are different areas. Some ceilings drop low, others stretch high, warehouse tall. Some corners are tight, too tight, and I have to turn my body sideways to slide through. Once I found a stairwell, but it only led me to a level with concrete walls and dimmer lighting. It felt more enclosed there, more industrial. I didn't stay long. There's no sound, no dripping pipes, no scurrying in the vents, just my footsteps, just the sound of my breathing when I stop walking. I talk to myself sometimes, just to make sure I still can. Food and water appear in odd ways. Once, a can of soup was placed on the floor, label clean, not dusty. Another time, a water bottle sat neatly beside a wall as if left intentionally. I always check them for signs of tampering, but they're sealed. I don't know where they come from. I don't ask anymore. I eat when I'm hungry. I drink when I'm thirsty. I haven't gotten sick. I've come across dead ends that weren't there the day before. Entire corridors vanish behind me. I'll turn a corner only to find the path I just took now leads to a blank wall. But it doesn't frighten me. It just is. I sleep when I'm tired, sometimes on the floor, sometimes against the wall. I haven't had dreams in a long time. There was a room I once found. It had wallpaper that was deep blue instead of yellow. That felt significant. I stayed there for what felt like a few days. Then the room was gone when I woke up. Back to yellow. Always back to yellow. I tried to mark walls at first. Scratches, notes with a pen. But the marks would fade. Some walls changed. Some stayed the same but just weren't where they were the day before. I've learned to let go of the idea of mapping this place. It doesn't want to be mapped. I don't run. There's nothing to run from. But I walk every day, slowly, calmly. I listen for what isn't there, and in a strange way, that's how I stay sane. There was a time I thought I saw someone else, just a glimpse around a far corner. But when I reached the intersection, it was empty. I didn't chase. I didn't call out. It wasn't curiosity. It was peace. I let them go. I've accepted that I may never leave. This place doesn't offer threats. It offers stillness. And it's in that stillness that something far deeper grows. Not fear, not madness, just understanding of how small I am, how temporary, how quiet the world can truly be when all distractions are removed. This place doesn't need to scare you. It just waits. And eventually, you begin to match its patience. I keep walking, not to escape, not to find anything. I walk because it's all there is. It was subtle at first, the way the rooms began to notice me. Not in the sentient sense. There's no feeling of being watched, no shift in atmosphere. But I began seeing signs, small consistencies that suggested some of these walls had seen me before. A scratch I hadn't made, still there the next time I passed. A discarded wrapper I was sure I'd left 2 turns back, now ahead of me. I passed a room yesterday that had a single folding chair placed neatly in the center. A chair I remember from a week ago. The same scratch on its metal frame, the exact same spot. But I had moved on from that area long ago. It wasn't possible. And yet there it was, familiar, unchanging, as if the room had moved instead of me. Sometimes I feel like I'm walking in a place that shifts behind me. The path I just took now leads elsewhere, and the room I passed 3 days ago returns in another form. Not haunted, more like drifting. Floating pieces of a puzzle that rearranged themselves slowly and quietly. I found another food item today, a pack of crackers, placed on a shelf inside a recessed niche. It was the same brand as one I ate weeks ago. Same expiration date, same crumple in the plastic. I took it, quietly, and sat with it for a while before opening it. The silence is constant, but I've grown used to it. It's a companion now, not oppressive, just ever-present. A soft weight pressing down gently, reminding me that I am still here, still real. I saw light through a vent once. It wasn't daylight. It was blue, cold, flickering. I didn't investigate. I simply noted it and moved on. Curiosity doesn't serve much here. Neither does fear. Sleep still comes, though never deeply. I rest in stretches, sometimes on carpet, sometimes in corners. The longer I'm here, the less I seem to need. Maybe the rules are different in this place. Maybe I am different now. I've started leaving small markers again, not to map, just to remember. A paperclip bent into a shape, a button pressed into soft drywall. They sometimes vanish, sometimes return, like the place is playing a slow, quiet game with me. I don't mind. Once I came across a massive space, too wide to see the walls. The floor was tile instead of carpet. There were no lights in the ceiling, but it was still illuminated with a dim, even glow. I walked for what must have been an hour. It never changed. No sound, no end. Just my footsteps and the soft echo of nothing. Eventually, I turned around. I don't know if I returned to where I began. It didn't matter. I think this place is infinite in a way we don't understand. Not just in space, but in perception. It's bigger than it appears. Or perhaps I'm smaller than I think. Still, I walk. I move through the stillness. I eat when I can. I rest when I must. And the rooms, they remember. There comes a moment in solitude when the idea of waiting quietly dissolves. At first, I thought I was waiting to be found. Then I thought I was waiting to find something. But I'm not sure I believe in that anymore. Here, time is not something that passes. It lingers. It builds up in corners like dust, accumulates behind you as you walk. It doesn't move forward. It thickens. I haven't spoken in what might be weeks. The last words I remember saying were to myself, something simple like, "This way, maybe." I don't even know if I said it out loud or just imagined the sound. The thought felt real enough. Here, thought is the only sound I can trust. The yellow walls don't change much, but I've stopped looking for variety. They aren't trying to deceive me. They're not hostile. They just are. Consistent, endless, indifferent. And in that indifference, I've begun to notice my mind turning inward, not in panic, but in erosion, a slow wearing away of what I once thought defined me. There is no feedback here, no one to talk to, no one to compare myself to. My existence is unobserved, unrecorded. It feels thin, like I'm being stretched over these hallways, smeared across corridors like a memory that won't quite fade. I remember my name, I think, but it no longer feels important. It feels like something that belongs to a different context, one where other people existed, where names served a purpose. Here, I could rename myself 100 times over, and it wouldn't change a thing. Loneliness here is not loud. It's not crying or screaming into the void. It's a kind of quiet forgetting, like the way a child forgets a dream the moment they wake. Only I'm the child, and I'm the dream. When I sleep, I don't dream anymore, just blackness, deep and still. Waking up feels the same as going to sleep. No difference, just another stretch of yellow, another soft fluorescent light humming in a sky that never changes color. There are no seasons here, no days, no nights, no temperature changes. I miss cold, I miss warm, I miss contrast. I once sat in a dead-end hallway for what must have been a day. I didn't move. I didn't try to find a new way forward. I just sat, staring at the wall, waiting for something to change. Nothing did. I think that was the point. Eventually, I stood up and continued walking, not because I believed I'd find something, but because stillness felt more suffocating than the repetition. I passed a mirror once. It was cracked and hanging loosely from a wall that didn't match the others, a rare deviation. I looked at my face, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, I didn't recognize it. Not because it was distorted, not because I'd aged, but because I had forgotten what I was supposed to look like. When no one sees you, when no one speaks your name, when no one reacts to your presence, you begin to become someone else. Or maybe you stop being anyone at all. This place was not built to kill. It was built to unmake. It doesn't need creatures. It doesn't need fear. It has patience. It waits as you shed layers of yourself, memory, identity, ego, like peeling wallpaper, until you are nothing but movement and thought, a walking idea of who you once were. Sometimes I think about what I miss most. the sound of a fan at night, the weight of a coat on my shoulders, the smell of rain on concrete, all the small things, all the things that meant nothing when I had them. But I don't cry. I haven't cried since I arrived. Not because I'm strong, but because crying implies someone might hear it. I know I'm still real. I know I exist. But I also know that every step I take here takes me a little further. I found something today. At first I thought it was rust, a faded smear across the wall, too dark to be fresh, too faint to be threatening. It was almost the same color as the carpet, but once I noticed it, I couldn't ignore it. A curved shape, like a handprint dragged sideways. It ended near the baseboard and disappeared beneath the damp edge of the floor. I stood there for a long time, not frightened, just uncertain. It was the first sign I'd seen that something else might have once been here. Not alive necessarily, but present. Something happened. That much was clear. But there was no scent, no sound, no trail. Just the dried memory of movement and struggle. I moved on. The hallways beyond that spot were unchanged. Yellow wallpaper, damp carpet, steady lighting. I walked slower than usual, not because I expected anything, but because my thoughts were no longer self-contained. Something external had intruded. Several hours later, or perhaps longer, I passed through a wider room, one of those that feel like abandoned conference spaces with thin dividers and torn linoleum in the corners. The stain there was larger, a patch soaked into the floor, dark, dull, the color of old blood, dried and dead. There was a drag mark leading away from it. No body, no bones, no tools, just the evidence of absence. It didn't alarm me. What would be the point? I've been here long enough to understand that fear is a luxury. It implies urgency, a need to survive. But here there is no threat I can name, and no future I can anticipate. There's only observation, only witnessing. I continued. Another turn, another corridor. On the left wall, faint handprints. Too high for a child, too small for someone like me. Each one perfectly spaced, trailing down the hall until they vanished around the next bend. I didn't follow them at first. I simply stared at them for a while, marveling at the shape of them. So human, so distinctly not mine. But the corridor looped around eventually, and I passed that stretch of wall from the other side. The prints were gone. The wall was clean. I didn't question it. This place changes itself slowly, deliberately. It gives and it takes. It reveals and conceals, but never at once, never directly. Further on in a narrow hallway with a ceiling so low I had to duck, I saw a smear running along the top edge. Red, faint. It traced the full length of the passage like someone had been pulled through, their heads scraping the ceiling all the way. Still, no sound, no trace of flesh, no breath but mine. I sat for a while near that passage, resting against the wall with my legs drawn up. I traced the seam in the wallpaper with my finger, wondering how many other people had done the same before they disappeared. Or maybe they didn't disappear. Maybe they just stopped being remembered. It's strange. The blood doesn't frighten me. It feels familiar, even grounding. A sign that something else happened here once. Something other than wandering and waiting. Evidence of consequence. Still, there is no resolution. No climax. Just red. No message written in it. No body to mourn. No screams echoing through the halls. Only stains. Only silence. The back rooms remain the same. They offer nothing more than what you bring into them. But now they carry this too. Evidence. And whether it's mine or someone else's, doesn't matter. The silence continues. The rooms shift. And I walk. Not away, not toward. Just forward. I found the first body in a supply closet. It wasn't hidden, just stored, folded into the corner like forgotten inventory. The smell hit me first, different from the usual must and rot of damp carpet. This was sour, sweet in the wrong way, heavy. I stood at the door for a long time before stepping in. The man was young, maybe mid-30s. His eyes were closed, hands folded on his stomach like someone had positioned him with care. But the gash across his neck said otherwise. There was no blood around him. It had all soaked into the floor beneath him, dried to a dark outline that mirrored his shape. He had been there for a while. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I just knelt beside him, searching his face for any hint of who he was. But there was nothing, just stillness, just another object left behind. I moved on. The next two came quickly, less neatly placed. One slumped against the wall with arms sprawled out. The other curled into a fetal position, blood trailing in a loop around the hallway as if he had crawled in circles before finally stopping. These were recent, days old maybe. I checked for identification. Nothing, not even shoes. Whoever killed them had taken anything resembling identity. All that remained was flesh and silence. And yet, this felt different from the back rooms themselves. This wasn't the slow psychological unmaking I'd come to know. This was deliberate. This was personal. Someone was here. I began to notice signs, things I had missed in the past, scratches on doors that weren't mine, items missing that I'd thought I had misplaced, food wrappers that didn't belong to me, footprints in the dust, size 11, maybe 12, heavy tread, not mine. I wasn't alone, but unlike the comfort that might have once brought me, this realization felt sharp. A threat that wasn't born of decay or time or place. A threat that could choose. I saw him for the first time at a distance. A hallway about 40 feet long. He was at the other end, facing away from me, motionless, dressed in plain gray clothing, like mine. I didn't call out. I didn't move. Neither did he. Then he turned, slowly, methodically. His face was blank, eyes open too wide, expressionless, like someone remembering how to mimic a human face but never quite getting it right. Blood on his hands, stained into his sleeves. He didn't speak. He took one step toward me. I stepped back. He didn't run. He didn't charge. He just started walking, patiently, as if there were no rush at all. As if he knew that here, everything waits eventually. I turned and moved in the opposite direction, quietly but steadily. I didn't run. Running breaks the silence. Running calls out. For a long time I walked, never turning around. The halls remained consistent. No bodies, no marks. As if the place wanted me to forget, as if it tried to soothe me. But I remember. I remember the closet. I remember the faces. I remember him. And now, I'm being watched. Not by the rooms, not by some unknown entity, but by someone like me. Only he's made a choice to become more than a ghost in these halls, to leave a mark, and now I must make mine. Since I saw him, I haven't truly rested. I still lie down, I still close my eyes, but sleep doesn't come the same way anymore. It's thinner now, light, fragmented. I drift not into dreams, but into awareness that slips just below the surface of waking. My body may rest, but my thoughts continue pacing. He's out there, somewhere. And the back rooms are infinite, but somehow he's always close. I hear nothing. That's what makes it worse. No footsteps, no breathing, but the signs remain. He doesn't leave much, just enough. A shoe print near where I had eaten the night before. A corner of a cloth caught in a doorway I swore I passed first. A single drop of blood on a wall that hadn't been there yesterday. We aren't chasing each other. We're orbiting. There's no confrontation yet, just the knowledge that two people cannot stay unseen forever. Eventually, we will share a hallway. Eventually, one of us will have to stop moving. He's patient. So am I. The back rooms are beginning to feel different now, smaller, more intentional. The shifting layout, once abstract and random, now feels as though it's directing us toward each other. Walls I once passed now close behind me more frequently. I double back only to find that paths I've memorized no longer exist. The environment is not hostile, but it is no longer indifferent. It wants something. I passed a large open area today, an office space stripped bare save for a single desk in the center. A knife had been stabbed into the desktop, still upright, blade rusted at the tip. Not left in panic, placed, an offering, a warning. I didn't take it. Instead, I left something of my own. A strip of fabric torn from my sleeve. I tied it to the leg of the desk, not as a message, but as acknowledgement. I know he's here. I know he's watching. I am not running. Not yet. Hours, or perhaps days, passed before the next encounter. Not face to face, just proximity. I turned a corner and smelled it. Blood. Fresh. The kind that stains the air before it stains the walls. A body, new, his work. The victim had been struck in the chest multiple times, hands defensive, mouth open but quiet. No signs of a struggle, no sign of the killer. Only the aftermath left for me to find. There was no note, no carving, no declaration, only a presence. His presence, like he was asking a question without words. Will you come find me now? I moved on. We are circling closer now. I feel it. The rooms curve in subtler ways. The long, straight corridors bend before I can see the end. The loops are tightening. I think he wants me to see him again. I think he wants me to understand something. Maybe he used to be like me, wandering, alone, forgotten. Maybe the only way he could be remembered was through the permanence of death. In this place, We lose names. We lose time. We lose meaning. But when you kill, you leave a mark. And maybe that's all he's trying to do. Stay real. Maybe soon I'll have to choose whether to let him do that, to witness it, or to stop it. But not yet. For now, we walk 2 quiet lives, 1 corridor apart. I found the staircase by accident. It was tucked behind a panel that had been pried loose from the wall, a gap too narrow to notice unless you were already looking for exits, or already hiding. It spiraled downward, not sharply, but with a strange softness to its curve, like it wasn't meant to take anyone anywhere quickly. The walls were bare concrete. The lights here flickered differently, cooler, whiter. I descended. The air was colder below. Still not cold, but different. The smell of blood was faint, but I could feel it in the walls. Old stains lived in the concrete. I didn't look too closely at them. At the base of the stairs was a platform, maybe 15 feet wide. Beyond it, nothing. Just a void. A clean, endless drop without walls or ceiling or sound. Like someone had peeled the world back and forgotten to put it together again. I didn't have time to process it because he was already there. Standing near the edge. Waiting. He didn't run. He didn't raise a weapon. Just stood with his hands by his sides. Blood on his sleeves, on his collar. Eyes wide. Face pale. He didn't speak. Neither did I. We simply looked at each other, the distance between us measured not just in steps, but in every silent moment we had both spent alone in this place. I saw it on him, the fatigue, the unraveling, the ache of invisibility. He was the ghost of a man who had tried to scream without making a sound, who had decided that if he could not be remembered through kindness, then pain would do. He stepped forward. Not fast, measured. I stepped back, and that was all it took. There was a scuffle, not violent, just sudden. He lunged clumsily and grabbed my shoulder. I twisted. My arm went up. We turned together in that brief moment of imbalance, and then he was gone. Over the edge. No sound. No scream. Just gone. I stood there for a long time, looking over. There was no end to that fall. Just depth. Just absence. No blood. No body. No proof he'd ever existed. In this place, that's the worst fate of all. I backed away from the ledge and sat down. My breath was steady. My hands were cold. The silence returned. But it was different now. The air felt lighter somehow. Not better, not safer, just less shared. He was gone, and I was alone again. Completely. I walked away from the edge slowly. My legs felt heavy, not injured, just worn down by weight I couldn't place. Not guilt, not relief, just fatigue. The kind that settles deep in the bones after something irreversible. There were no lights on the staircase now, only ambient grayness. I didn't look back. I found myself drifting again through rooms that no longer surprised me. Yellow wallpaper, damp carpet, the smell of time. All of it had returned and I moved through it like I was underwater. Each step was mechanical. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't dreading. I was simply moving forward because the alternative, stillness, felt heavier than walking. I passed through familiar rooms I no longer remembered. My mind felt frayed at the edges, like a photograph left too long in the sun. And then I saw it. A hallway I'd never seen before. Narrow, pinched, tucked between two broken filing cabinets that hadn't been there yesterday. I almost missed it. My shoulder brushed the frame as I entered, and a sharp edge caught my shirt, tearing a small strip away. It was short, just a few paces long. The air was dry here. The carpet ended abruptly and gave way to cold, smooth tile. At the end of the hallway was a door, metal, dull, undecorated, and on it, painted in uneven black strokes, was a single word: exit. I froze. The word looked wrong, foreign, not because it was unfamiliar, but because it hadn't meant anything to me in so long. Seeing it now was like remembering a childhood melody you thought was invented in a dream. Exit. I stared at it for a long time. Minutes, maybe hours, waiting for it to change, waiting for the paint to run, for the letters to rearrange into something meaningless. They didn't. They stayed, unmoving. I stepped closer. One step, then another. My heartbeat didn't quicken. My breathing didn't change. The exhaustion remained, but there was something else under it now. Something small and sharp and flickering like a match held too long. Possibility. I reached out. My fingers hovered just inches from the handle. I didn't open it, not yet. Just stood there, palm trembling slightly, the metal cool beneath my skin. The first door in this place that offered anything. The first label I'd seen that meant something beyond endlessness. Exit. The door opens. The silence continues. There are no grand revelations. Just one man, stepping into the unknown after being alone for too long. After losing everything but the memory of his own footsteps. The handle was colder than I expected. I thought it might resist, that the door would be locked or sealed, or that it would vanish the moment I touched it. That had happened before. I'd seen doorways turn to walls, hallways collapse into themselves, but this door stayed. And it opened. No sound, no creak, just the gentle release of something not touched in a very long time. Beyond it, darkness, not the kind that swallows light, but the kind that holds its breath. I stepped through. The door didn't slam shut. It didn't dissolve. It simply remained behind me, silent and gray, as I walked forward into something else. The air shifted, dry, warmer. My feet no longer pressed into damp carpet, but onto solid, dusty stone. The scent changed. No longer sterile, earthy, ancient. It wasn't a hallway this time. It was a corridor of crumbling stone, lit by faint natural light spilling from cracks above. Dust drifted through the air like slow snow. I kept walking. There was no turning back. The door behind me, gone. I didn't panic. I didn't smile. Just kept walking. And then, a slope, rough ground beneath my feet. My legs ached with every step. But it was a real ache, earned and familiar, not the timeless drag of the back rooms, but something tied to progress. I reached the top of the incline and saw it. Sky. A pale blue sky, hazy and distant, stretching above a ridge of gray hills. No sun, no horizon, just a soft, endless light. The kind I'd forgotten existed. I stood there for a long time, not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't know what to do with it. My knees gave out. I sat on the stone, felt it beneath my fingers, listened to the wind. Wind. There was wind. I didn't cry. There were no tears left in me. But something inside me finally loosened. Not joy, not closure, just relief. I was out. No monsters, no answers, just silence. Still, but a different kind. Not the silence of isolation, the silence of peace. And I breathed. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I breathed.